So we have a remote learning plan with a couple of twists.
Today, we're joined by Chris Godowski, superintendent of Adams 12 five-star schools. Chris, we're talking today about your district's plan to restart school with remote classes on August 27th, but also something interesting you're doing with these in-person learning pods for certain students.
Most of our students throughout the entire system will have this in-person day in and day out remote learning experience where they use Florida Virtual Academy curriculum as the foundation that our teachers will then supplement and enrich. Then we're also going to have these learning pods where we have students elementary and middle school age primarily, some at the high school level too, where students will be able to come in groups of 10 to 15. It gets bigger as students get older in terms of class size, but they'll be in a safe environment, physically distanced, be able to access internet. They'll have members of our support staff, whether they're paraprofessionals who typically work with students in classrooms to support teachers, or before and after school staff that often work with students and helping them get homework done after school. So we feel like it's really a nice model that allows small class size, good distancing, reduces the scope of quarantines if we have a positive case emerge, and allows online instruction to be a consistent piece that happens each and every day.
You know, we've all learned these last 5 months with COVID-19 what we can do remotely, either working from home or learning from home. But why is it so important for some students to still have that in-person instruction even during a time like this?
We believe, especially for some of our students with disabilities and special needs, that they need to have that interaction, in-person interaction with an educator to really understand the content, to be able to repeat it in the most effective ways, for the modeling of the teacher to work best. That in-person experience just seems for many of our students and families to allow them to make much greater progress than in the online space.
Adams 12 is not a small district. It's one of the bigger districts in the Front Range. How hard has it been to coordinate both these in-person learning pods for select students and also just the online remote learning in general?
Yeah, it's a huge logistical challenge. No two ways about that. Those cohorts aren't always neat and tidy groups of 10 or 12 in every first grade class at every school. And so trying to match the right staff person with the right school and the right grade level is the work in front of us now. It is complicated, but in the end, we believe it's going to really work well for our families.
How is your district prepared for not just the educational challenges, but also the mental health challenges of students not getting to either see their friends as much, or now with certain activities on hold for the fall semester, it's not going to be that normal high school experience? How is your district prepared to work with students who might struggle through this different environment?
For our secondary students that might not be in a learning pod, we believe it's critical that our students come back, and especially as you're making big transitions into 6th grade or 9th grade, that you have an opportunity to meet teachers at your school in person in a back to school experience. And then for all of our secondary students, even if you're not in something like athletics, and some athletics will at least be able to practice, even though the scale of sports and activities this fall will be much less than normal. But if you're not involved in that, we still feel like coming to campus, if you have that interest, once every 2 weeks to meet with a teacher and a cohort of students, not so much to focus on any of your content, but to check in and say, how are you doing? How can we support you better? What are you struggling with? If we see something in that setting that raises alarm bells for us, we can then refer that student on to a counselor, a social worker, a psychologist, other specialists on our staff to do a more intensive follow-up.
When September 25th approaches, that's kind of been the date thrown out there that remote classes will happen until at least then. What metrics will your district look at when it comes to COVID-19 to make that decision to whether to return to class or stay remote?
Those things will likely look at how many cases do you have on average per day over the last 14 days, maybe longer, because we know there can be ups and downs in that process. So that can be a piece that we look at, the rate of positive tests that happen amongst those who are tested for COVID. If you get beyond 5%, at what level should you say that there's just too much transmission going on and that we got to look at continuing remote learning? Quarantine rules will also be an important part of the mix. CDPHE yesterday announced some revised standards that are helpful, because up until that revision, we were believing that we'd have to quarantine kids even before a positive COVID test if they were having a runny nose, a headache, a cough, other symptoms that may not
reflect that they had coronavirus. So those will be key factors for us. Is this just weird in general, this whole year going into it? It's almost like going into an unknown, but taking all the planning and the stress aside for a second, is it just strange that this is kind of what everyone's going through? As we landed on a path moving forward of having remote learning with these twists as our standard for starting the year, there were tears in the room. So many of us and our colleagues, either as parents or as long-term employees in school systems, so much look forward to the start of the school year, having students in person with us. There's just tremendous positive energy, and yet we're going to do the very best we can in this new adjusted model to bring out as much of that positive energy as we can and get kids off to a great start. Wrapping up here, anything else you would want parents or students or staff members to know about the school year heading into this? We talk a lot about giving grace to one another and giving grace to teachers, to other families who may have different points of view about how to proceed in this pandemic and what decisions to make. I think is critical. It is such an up and down roller coaster season over the last 5 months, and there's times that you feel like you're heading toward one outcome, like an in-person start. Certainly true of all of us in June, and then as the virus escalates, you feel like you're abruptly having to turn and go a different direction. Chris Godowski, superintendent of Adams 12 5-star schools, thank you so much for your time today, and best of luck as you head into the school year. Thank you, Ryan. Really appreciate that.